Alberto Williams was the most important symphonist in Argentinian music history. He was born in 1862 and died in 1952, and during the 1880s was a student at the Paris Conservatory, which was a huge accomplishment for a Latin American at the time to enter the Paris Conservatory, to be basically a piano student, as he was a very accomplished pianist, concert pianist indeed. At the same time, during his stay in Paris, he was for about 4 years a student, private student of composition with César Franck, which ultimately influenced in a decisive manner his compositional style. Um, One major issue in Argentinian music history is the contrasting forces between the idea of writing academic music based on European parameters and the fact of using Argentinian folk music in art music. Indeed, some musicologists have discussed in Argentina the fact of that one or another composer reached a syncretism between these two contrasting forces. That is, the ability to write a nationalistic symphonic music based on European formal structures. In my opinion, some composers reached that syncretism, some not. In the case of Alberto Williams, in some works, especially the symphonies. Williams wrote 9 symphonies, 3 symphony poems, 2 concert overtures, and a number of suites based on Argentinian folk music, which were mostly transcriptions from his piano music done by himself. Um, it's interesting to mention that he never wrote a piano concerto, for example, considering that about 70% of his total compositional output is piano music. His symphonies were written in two periods, very different one from another, separated for more than 25 years. The first 3 symphonies were written between 1907 and 1911, and the symphonies from number 4 from number 9 to number 9 were written in the 30s, when he was more than 70 years old, basically writing 1 symphony per year. Alberto Williams' symphonies are classified in 3 major groups. The first symphony stands by itself, and then the nationalistic symphonies, which are numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9, and then the so-called esoteric or exotic symphonies, which are 6, 7, and 8. It is very important to mention that only the first symphony is absolute music, because symphonies from 2 to 9, independently of the category in which they are classified, they were based on poems written by himself. That is, it is programmatic music, and in most cases, that programmatic story based on his poems condition the form of the symphonies. Indeed, some of the symphonies are closer to a multi-movement symphonic poem than a symphony per se. The first symphony in B minor, from 1907, is the most Frankian symphonic work that Alberto Williams ever wrote. It is in 4 movements. It can be classified as a late romantic symphony, basically. But in 1909, he writes his first nationalistic symphony, number 2. The name of it's The Witch from the Mountains. It's a legend from Argentinian's northwest. And it's already in 4 movements, but as I say, the form is conditioned by the program. And it's to date the most performed symphony. Symphony number 3 from 1911. It's a symphony that is called The Sacred Forest, based on a legend from the northeast, from the part of Argentina bordering with Brazil. The symphony took more than 30 years to be premiered because it is of Mahlerian proportions, not only in length but in the orchestra that is required, with 8 horns, 4 trombones, 2 tubas, 4 trumpets, woodwinds by 4, a huge section of strings, plus piano, celeste, harp, and timpani and percussion. So no wonder why it took so long to be premiered. Then Williams, as I said, took more than about 23, 24 years to write symphonies again during the 1930s, and when he was already more than 70 years old. The second group of symphonies, the nationalistic symphonies, are, well, the 2, 3. Number 4, it's called the Bird on the Road. It's a story from the Pampas, from the central grasslands. It's a very complex symphony, very demanding technically. Number 5 has a weird name. It's called the Doll's Heart. In spite of its name, it was Williams's preferred symphony, favorite symphony. In my opinion, it's one of the 2 or 3 best, and I had the privilege to conduct it. And it's, in my opinion, the most nationalistic symphonies of all. The second movement, for example, is it's a suite of Argentinian folk dances, very, very brilliantly orchestrated. Williams indeed was a brilliant orchestrator. Symphony number 9 is called the Humor Symphony, and as it did Shostakovich, Williams did a sidewalk regarding the scary number 9 because of Beethoven, of course, and wrote as a number 9. He was his last symphony. Wrote a humor symphony based on some story of frogs that discuss human issues. So it's quite brilliant, quite sparkly symphony. Then we have symphonies number 6, 7, and 8, which are called the esoteric or exotic symphonies, because they have absolutely nothing to do with nationalistic music or absolute music derived from European parameters. Symphony number 6 is called The Death of the Comet. It's the shortest of all, only about 15 minutes long, because Williams was an aficionado of astronomy. He had even a home telescope. And symphonies number 7 and 8 are based on ancient Egypt. The names of those 2 symphonies are respectively Eternal Rest and the Sphinx. The Eternal Rest is based on a poem written by him. As I say, they are all programmatic symphonies, and a poem on the discovery of Tutankhamun's grave. And the Sphinx is, of course, the huge sculpture that is close to the pyramids in Giza in Egypt. The exotic, the orientalistic environment or inspiration of those symphonies is quite evident. It's important to mention that Williams was a major figure in Argentinian music, not only as a composer. He was so important that he had, of course, the privilege that all his symphonies, with the exception of the third, were premiered almost immediately after being written in Colón Theater or by the National Symphony Orchestra. Indeed, for the last 2 or 3 years, the National Symphony Orchestra in Argentina, it's on the task of recording all Alberto Williams' symphonies to leave a document or a recorded document of the works which were the most important, as I say, by any Argentinian composer to date. Also, the last thing to mention is that Williams was a major organizer of the Argentinian education system, He had a private conservatory that reached by the 1920s and 30s more than 100 subsections throughout the country, even way before the Argentinian public education system was able to teach music. So he played towards the end of his life, so he lived about 90 years. He was considered quite a conservative figure, almost a dinosaur at the end, because of the new stylistic tendencies that showed up, mostly from the 30s, with composers inspired by the neoclassicism of Stravinsky and Villa-Lobos, and then of course 12-tone system composers, and then of course we have the appearance of in the 40s of Ginastera, and in the 50s Piazzolla with tango. Thank you so much.